Welcome back, everybody, to another video. Justin Watches Movies here. Today, I'm joined by the creators of the new Netflix anime series, Blood of Zeus. If you guys have not binged this series, you guys need to, because it is truly epic. There's going to be no spoilers in this interview for this show, because honestly, there was plenty of times I was surprised with this show. But why don't you guys introduce yourself real quick, and then tell us a little bit about where you came up with the idea for the show.
I'm Vlas Parlapanides.
And I'm Charlie Parlapanides. And to be honest, this was an idea, if you really want to know the truth, goes back a bunch of years. We had an idea to do a Greek mythology anthology show, kind of like American Horror Story, but spend one season on each myth. And so we had worked up this take to do kind of Icarus and Daedalus over 10 episodes, and we pitched our agent, and they really liked the idea. But like agents do, they know that buyers want to know what the other seasons are. And if you really know your Greek mythology, there's a bunch of stories that intersect that story. And when we started to break down what the other seasons could be, it kind of struck us that if you took part of this story and part of this story and you stuck them together, that could be really cool and really interesting. And so, to be honest, that was the genesis of that idea. Nothing ever came to fruition. We still believe in that idea, that it'd be cool to see kind of like an American Horror Story kind of anthology show about Greek mythology, even in the live action space. But that is where the seed of the idea came from.
It'd be really interesting to see something like that play out, live action or anime.
Even, we've always loved anime and been fans. And then we were very fortunate, and it was very fortuitous. We had a meeting with John Derderian at Netflix, who runs their kind of live action adult anime space, and we were just lucky that he said, do you have any ideas that could work in this space? And we pitched him what eventually became Blood of Zeus, and we were just very lucky that just happened to happen. But we would love to tell more stories in this space. It's just so much fun,
And we're eternally indebted and grateful to John, because he took this show, he believed in it, he had a vision for the show, he believed that it would work, and he stuck his neck out. Normally for an executive to greenlight this, it's dicey in many ways. And now that it's being received so well, and we can kind of tell from the early reaction that there's a real appetite for it, it's making John look really smart.
And I will say, John was also the one that greenlit Castlevania. And, video games to movie/TV doesn't have the greatest track record. Like that was a bit of a gamble, but he really believed in that script and that story and the direction they wanted to take it. And he believed in this. And so like for people that are enjoying this kind of renaissance of 2D animation that Netflix is putting out, it's all John.
I agree with that. And also too, with John, he has like a very good business mind, but he's also an artist at heart. So I think that really helps him, because he looks at something and he lets that artistic part of him, like, does it move him emotionally? Is he engaged? So he combines the two. And I think with just even those two shows, Castlevania and our show, that bodes well for him.
Watching Castlevania, and a pretty big fan of anime and video games, and that's probably one of like the best video game adaptations I have seen. And then seeing that your guys' show was connected from the same company that made Castlevania, like right away, there was a lot of high hopes going into it, and it definitely paid off with it.
We were huge Castlevania fans too. We always loved the show, and there came a time where we had to choose the production company that was going to produce Blood of Zeus. So before we met, Brad Graber, who is, the CEO of Powerhouse, we were always leaning towards them because we were such huge fans of Castlevania. And then we met him and everyone else there, Powerhouse, and we were like, this is a no-brainer for us.
Yeah.
Brad's a great guy. And like what's amazing is he's this great kind of combination of various things. He looks exactly like, Josh Brolin. Like you would think like, oh my God, there's Thanos. Like he looks so much like him. It's remarkable. But then what's great is that like, he's really into, martial arts and mixed martial arts, and, he'll wear like a Cobra Kai jacket, but then he's also this great businessman. So he's this like interesting kind of combination of both, creative and Eastern philosophy, but then he's super organized. And from our first meetings with him, as Vlas mentioned, we went around with John. He said, listen, we have to find the animation studio and choose an animation studio. And we were always leaning towards, Powerhouse. But then after we sat with them, we just knew, it was like, oh, Brad, this is the guy that is going to take this show. And they're just an amazing group. With Powerhouse, they have, this is just the tip of the spear. There's more stuff, different shows coming out behind us. And I think people are going to be really blown away.
Yeah, if it's in the style of Blood of Zeus, then I'm all for it. I was in high school and we were forced to read Greek mythology, but I really did enjoy it. I remember like in ninth grade reading the Odyssey, and I never thought I'd be sitting here today in 2020 watching a bloody, action-packed series based around Greek mythology. And it's truly like you guys brought the characters to life within that series and told such great stories throughout. Is there any other stories besides the one that you did mention, any other stories that you wanted to write about or you had on the table before coming to Zeus and Heron within the series?
I mean, the two that I know, there's three, but one, again, I think if you look at the Icarus Daedalus story, I think that's an amazing story, and people don't realize the scope of that story and how, Icarus's father was this amazing inventor, and he was accused of murder, and they had to flee, and they basically went to, Crete or the Minoan civilization as refugees. I think that story, and then where it, ends, and then the other stories that intersect it are amazing. We've always had this really cool idea, and we would love to do it as an anime show, this story that surrounds the mythology of Medusa and the Gorgons. We think that would be awesome. And then there's another story that, like, I think every writer, and I don't want to say it because I'm afraid someone else will steal it before we get a chance to tell. There's an amazing story of a demigod story that people aren't very familiar with this character, but when you read the story as a writer, right away you see the bones for a great dramatic story. And so we've always loved all this stuff, and always the challenge is we've pitched executives, the traditional versions of these, stories, and they kind of, their eyes will kind of glaze over and they think that, we've had 5 Hercules and we've been there and done that. So you always just have to try and find a way to make it feel fresh and new and engaging to kind of, get past the gatekeepers. But we think these stories are still very alive and very vibrant. And they're very much, if you really look at Greek mythology, they were the first superheroes. And I think that language that they speak in, all Marvel did and DC did was put kind of costumes on them. But it's the same drama, the same conflict, arch enemies, interconnected worlds. And so I think that's why they're still relevant.
Yeah. And your series towards the end, not spoiling it, definitely has a cinematic feel. Confrontations, whatever it is, the battle, the blood, all of the scope of it, it feels huge. And the score, all of it just comes together. It feels like I'm watching like a big blockbuster type of movie with the story that it is offering. And with all of the action and the characters and the twists and turns, what was one of your favorite aspects of writing this series?
Well, thank you for sharing that, because we made a concerted effort to try to bring that cinematic experience to the show. And that's something we discussed with our director, Sean Negoshian, who did a brilliant job in actually bringing this to life. And this is how our anime, I think, differentiates itself from other animes. We really made a concerted effort to try to make it as cinematic and as epic as possible. Yeah. So that involved the directing, that involved the score, that involved all facets of the production. And people have been commenting on that. So that's, when we hear it, it always makes us smile. So thank you for sharing that. And then for writing it, I would say, and I'm curious what Charlie would say, this is the first time we worked with a project where we were involved the whole way through, from inception idea to the very, very end. And that was very gratifying, because we were able to contribute, and we were able to tell the story we wanted to tell. Regardless if that's good or bad, it was a story we wanted to tell. And we hoped by telling a story that moved us emotionally, that it would have that, it would also move an audience emotionally. And so far, it seems to be doing that. So for me, that was probably the most gratifying part of writing this story. And, seeing it from the very beginning, writing it, and then seeing it come into fruition at the very end.
You know, Justin, it's funny that you say epic because, you know, John, you know, as you hand in scripts and you work on the show, you know, there was always lots of other notes, but the one thing John would always repeat almost every time we spoke was epic. Guys, epic. This has to be epic. And I think because that was always the kind of the mantra almost.
Marching order.
You know, coming from him in the marching order, you know, him just always telling us that after basically every meeting, that really kind of, you know, took root in the show. And then listen, what's great, you know, don't get me wrong, there are budget constraints, there are, you know, there's only, you know, you have limited resources, but, you know, part of like with something like Immortals, which we wrote, the first draft of Immortals that we sold, when a line producer came in and he broke it down for a budget, it was $150 million. And basically the studio said, if you can get the budget down to $75 million, we'll make it. And so basically then we had to kind of pull out all of the epic things that we had laid into it. And Tarzan, who we love, I mean, who's a truly class act and a great guy, he said basically we have to go from fantastical to fantastic. And what was great is that in this, you know, we were able to keep the scope and the fantastical elements and have creatures and monsters, and we were able to do it, and we didn't have to compromise that. So for us, we loved, like if this were to be a live action movie, it'd be a $200 million movie, $250 million movie. And so that was just really kind of freeing, you know, in some sense, not having, you know, we still had to cut things. And even too, like initially we wrote the scripts, and when Sean, the director, came in, he said, guys, like, cause some scripts were 25 pages, some were 26. He's like, they need to be 21 pages with 7 pages of action. And like, and so we had to spend, you know, 6 weeks just going through scripts and paring things down and losing certain storylines and making certain things, you know, just sequences smaller. But it was just, that was what was great. We were able to bring scope to the story in a way that we haven't been able to in other projects.
Well, all of it feels really big, and little things too, like the title sequence, how it just kind of plays into the series, and it isn't introduced right away. It kind of comes a little bit after. It kind of teases you, and then you know when it comes, and you got the rest of the story to enjoy. All those little things with the characters and the stories and the big twists and turns, it definitely hit that mark of being epic.
Oh, thank you. That was the director's idea, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because he was very good in so many different ways. And one of the things that he prided himself in was attention to detail. He gave a lot of thought to every moment, to every kill, to every look, to every, you know, dramatic moment. And when it came to the credits, he had this idea, you know, that it could foreshadow something that happens in the episode. And that's something that people have responded to. They really like that. So, and again, we always talk about, we're all shaped by experiences, and the experience that resonate most with us are when you see someone do something, when people lead by example. So he worked very, very hard. He always put an emphasis on making sure, you know, that every little detail was what it needed to be. And he always tried to plus everything. And so when the artists saw him working as hard as he was working, saw him doing all these things that he was doing, that basically made them work even harder, made them be more, you know, it raised everybody's game. And so, you know, that was something that we were blessed in having, a director who really worked hard, who was talented, and led by example.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Justin.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I give Sean a lot of credit too for setting that example, because part of it is that he ended up recruiting a lot of people to come and work on our show that gave up jobs at like traditional big steady animation studios, that left jobs at Warner's and DreamWorks, because he said, listen, we're going to swing for the fences with this, and we're going to make the show that we've all wanted to make. And he set that tone, and he convinced people to do it, and then he backed it up by always working his butt off. And that's why, again, that's all leadership, and he just did an amazing job. And that's why I'm glad, though, the opening credits, the end credits, where we kind of showcase some of the character sheets and the animatics and all these, you know, amazing contributions these artists made. that attention and care is evident throughout. And we appreciate that these people made these sacrifices. We all know what it's like to have a steady job at a good company, where as long as if you're not an idiot, you'll continue to work there for years and years and years. This isn't that, but they were willing to come here because they believed in the project and they believed in Sean.
And also, too, I would add the closing credits. That was Charlie's idea. He goes, "Hey, maybe we do something like they did in The Mandalorian," and then Sean took it a step further. So we get to see the evolution of a character, some of the early iterations of a character, and how we ended up where we ended up. And people love that. In addition to that, we give, people that work so hard, that are so talented, there's some recognition there. We say, hey, look at the work that these people did. And so we really like that component of it too, because, there were so many talented artists that worked so very hard on the show. So whenever we can give them a shout out or we can shine a light on their work, we're all for that.
You could have a simple, just black screen with the words on it, who's directing it, who wrote it, but to go above with that and have the drawings and the different versions of them, definitely does show all that little detail that you guys and Hall of Powerhouse Animation was willing to put into the show.
Exactly.
Was there any? There's a lot of Greek mythology characters within here, and there's just so many. It's just crazy. Was there anything that was cut out of this series when you guys were writing it?
Yeah, one of the challenge, Justin, was that we had a lot of characters, and there was a storyline with one of the characters that we want. There was more to it, but we just ran out of real estate, and we said, you know what? We'll get that in God willing, season 2. So that was a tough one. That was a real tough one because it was there, it was good, and at the end of the day, we just couldn't get it in there. And I even
offered, we sent emails, we'll put in our own money because we didn't want, it was a female character, and we didn't want to cut her storyline. Yeah. But they were like, guys, listen, like, we don't have time if we're still going to hit our release date. Like, you just have to let this one go. Yeah. But, that's the nature. It's funny, when you're growing up and just watching movies and TV shows, I remember one time Lucas said, you don't finish a movie, you abandon it. That was so strange. But now going through the process and seeing how movies and TV shows get made, I fully understand. And that is absolutely what happens. You fight and you claw and you scratch and you keep trying to make everything the best you can. But then at some point, the party has to end and there's no more money and no more time. And, now some people would argue it's not good to have as unlimited budget and all control, but, it's an interesting balance.
Yeah. Well, on my review, the comments are just blowing up about how great the show is.
Oh, thank you.
Do you guys have any plans for a second season, or do you guys have anything in the works that you guys would like to tease?
It's up to you, Justin. Get the word out. We need the viewership. That's what it's all about. I mean, it comes down to how many people watched the show in the first month. It doesn't matter if they watch it in the second month, third month. So please tell all your friends, all your viewers, your subscribers to watch it in that first month. And then based off of those numbers, the viewership we get from that first month, that's when Netflix decides whether or not they are going to greenlight a second season. We definitely have plans for a second season, but if we don't get those numbers, then, we will never get that shot.
I'll make sure everybody watches it that I know, but I know that the Netflix has the new top 10 section of it. And so I definitely think that if it hasn't already hit the top 10, I totally see that.
We're doing very well. Sorry.
Yeah, we were number 4 today in the U.S. And so, I don't know what that means to be number 4 on a Wednesday, if that means a lot of people, or if that's like a slow day on Netflix, but I hope it means a lot of people. And we're hoping people are tuning in. And, Vlas and I were a little obsessive and crazy, and we love this story so much. We kind of worked out a 20-page outline for the second season. But again, if it doesn't matter if we don't get the views, maybe, God willing, we'll get the views and we'll be able to make the second season. And if it doesn't, maybe we'll just release the story on, on social media so people can see where it was going to go. But there are a bunch of little clues in the first season. And there you might think, well, that shot, they really stayed on that shot for a long time. There's reasons for it because we're trying to set up things that we'll see in season 2, or hopefully see in season 2.
And we're #1 in Trinidad, #3 in Greece. We're doing really well in France. We're doing really well in Brazil. Brazil, I think we're 5, bro, or something like that. So
Yeah,
thank God,
fifth.
you know. But again, as far as we're concerned, we don't want anyone to take, you know, the foot off the pedal. Let's just keep watching until we get the official word.
Yeah. Well, it's like just a lot of comments and it's really popular like on my channel, and I've watched other reviews and other interviews you guys have done as well, and just seems like the buzz is growing for this series.
Oh, thank you.
Like any characters that you would like to talk about, maybe like you guys had planned for a second season, without like spoilers, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, the one thing I will say is that if anyone's been playing the game, you know, Hades, there'll be obviously, you know, lots of story parallels that they could maybe draw from. And then I guess the easiest way to say it without spoiling it is that a lot of it, what we focus on is the big three. And so we'll see. You know, people, I think, will figure out who that is.
Yeah.
That's a big part, God willing, of season 2. And also to really show, well, I don't know if we should say it, bro. We'll keep it under wraps for now, and hopefully we'll just get people will
Be interested.
watch, and we'll be able to tell that show. But there are other gods and goddesses. There's a couple goddesses that we're really going to focus on, that we want to focus on, that are a big part of this next season.
Well, I really hope you guys get greenlit for a second season, because this is one of my favorite series of the year, just not like anime, just in general. It was really epic, and I would love to explore more of your guys' writing and the different characters you guys have planned.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing that. That means a lot. Thank you.
We really appreciate it. And also want to give a shout out to our amazing cast. We were very lucky.
Yeah.
We thought we got an amazing cast, and that they did a great job. And, you know, this show is a testament to them and to the amazing artists at Powerhouse and to Sean. We just had a great group of creative people. And then our composer, Paul, he did an amazing job. So thank you. We appreciate you having us on, Justin.
Yeah. Well, everybody, you guys need to go check out Blood of Zeus on Netflix. Tell everybody about it. Check it out. It is really great. I promise you will not be disappointed with the series. Just sit down and don't do anything else. Just pay attention to the show, because there's some things possibly for a second season within there. So thank you guys for joining me on my channel. Like I said, this is my first big interview, and I'm happy that it was you guys talking about Blood of Zeus. Really cool show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure, Justin. Anytime.